Okay, and so then another point that he was making. What? All right, I'm actually looking at this right now. Oh, okay. So he was talking about the occult renaissance that happened in the Warlock shop in the Magical Child, and how it was a positive thing as opposed to a negative thing. I don't. So okay, there's a couple layers to that. But number one, what I want to clarify, and I actually thought of this. The second I asked Mark Stavish this question, I realized I had framed it improperly. Because when I was talking about the fact that, not the fact, the claim that members of the Son of Sam cult, and this claim, Lavenda himself wrote this in Sinister Forces, but it also appears in Dead Names, which is ostensibly by Simon. Either way, Lavenda himself said this in Sinister Forces, that I believe, if I remember correctly, that members of the Son of Sam cult would hang out at the Warlock gift shop. And so when I brought that up, I was not insinuating that the Warlock shop was involved in anything. I mean, I realized that right after I asked the question of Mark Stavish. I didn't make that clear, and I should have made that clear. I mean, I got some of this from James Wasserman's In the Center of the Fire. James Wasserman being an influential man who has since passed, influential in esoteric occult communities. And he worked at the Warlock gift shop. I read that book because I was interested in it, because I find James Wasserman to be a fascinating person who I actually admire and respect. Well, to the limited extent that you can as somebody who has just read somebody's books. I never knew the guy. My impression is that he was a good dude, and some of his ideas definitely don't gel with mine, but so what? There's a lot of good people out there whose ideas don't gel with mine. I'm friends with a Jehovah's Witness. I'm not even close to being a Jehovah's Witness. I don't care. I mean, people can have ideas that I don't agree with, and I can still like them. I can still admire them and respect them. So, yeah, as far as... But my wording might have been sloppy there. And in hindsight, I actually especially... And now I've rambled on so long, I think there probably won't be a lot of people who watch this whole response, but I actually also want to say this to the people who were involved in the Warlock gift shop and the Magical Child. If I was sloppy in the sense that it appeared that I was trying to connect those places to anything nefarious, then I apologize. That actually was not my intent. All I was saying was that it's fascinating and weird that these things were connected, that you had this whole network of stuff going on at the same time, and there were negative aspects under anybody's examination. There were negative aspects to the occult scene, of any occult scene, right? There's always good and there's always bad. And yeah, so I probably should have been a little more careful with my wording there, but I don't know. I'd probably have to go back and look at the videos, because I actually thought I had made that clear. All of these things I think I have actually made clear, but at the same time, I can appreciate the fact that Peter Lavenda is a living man. He's a human being who's out there, and yeah, and so, you know, and people who are involved in the Warlock gift shop, the Magical Child gift shop, I mean, they're real, they're out there, they're real human beings, and maybe I should be maybe add another layer of caution on top of this, but it actually kind of bums me out a little bit if people think that I was necessarily criticizing, like, the Warlock gift shop or the Magical Child. That wasn't my intent at all, man. I'm interested in the connections and the way all these things interweaved, but I'm actually utterly fascinated by 1970s New York, including the 1970s New York occult scene. And the fact that these things were somehow strangely tied into the Son of Sam, which they were, actually, now that I think about it, because I saw another documentary about the Warlock shop in which one of the guests said, she mentioned the Son of Sam people coming in. So, yeah, I didn't mean anything bad about that. And actually, the more I'm talking about this, the more I kind of just, screw that, man. I was not implying anything about those shops at all. I was just observing about the connection. And I, in general, have come at this with no disrespect intended for anybody. Well, I have disrespect intended for bad people, but I don't know if anybody in this thing is like everything, as I just said. I don't know exactly what's going on. And Peter Levenda, he is a prominent enough person that you can't have these. Well, it's hard to have these conversations without discussing him to some extent, and in that there's going to be some musings. But I've made no assertions about anything, and I would not make any assertions. It's actually a weird position because, as I've said, I'm actually a Peter Levenda fan in general. I wouldn't be if I saw some kind of definitive evidence that he had done something wrong, but I've seen none of that. I'm actually a fan in general of his work and his thinking, and yeah. So I don't know. I'm really starting to ramble here, but I want to be clear about my thoughts on this whole thing, and I think there was one other point that I wanted to... the only thing I would ask is, number one, as I've just said, I should have been more clear about some of my thinking, but if Peter Levenda were to somehow see this response, if that was the real Peter Levenda that left that comment on my board, I would say this, Mr. Levenda. In Sinister Forces, you say that Fred Chrisman, or you suggest that Fred Chrisman had been a member of the OSS, which is actually a suspicion that I share. I find interesting. And I don't have a negative view of Fred Chrisman, I would like to say. I actually have a very... my view of Fred Chrisman is a lot more complex than a lot of people put out there. And if you were part of the OSS, I think that would be awesome, because the OSS killed Nazis, which is awesome. So, to me, looking at that tie is not a negative thing. But anyway, and so Peter Levenda says that. I have been able to find no evidence of Chrisman's OSS ties. Doesn't mean it's not true, it just means there's no evidence of it. But all I would say to Levenda, if that was indeed your response, and if you're indeed watching this, all I would say is, I'm trying to figure out things just like you and just like anybody else, assuming you are just trying to figure out things and you are not trying to direct people's thinking as some kind of social engineering psyop, which I don't know, right? Like, again, I'm just talking about possibilities. I think I've read every book by Peter Levenda. So my point is, in discussing those things, you come upon this thing about Fred Chrisman, and it's all part of your general idea, your Sinister Forces. The whole Sinister Forces is taking all these weird happenings and tying them together in a net and trying to create a narrative, which is what I think is so fun about the book. And that's all I'm doing, man. I'm not making any claims about anything. And when I do make a claim, I will say this is a definitive fact and this is the source. Right now, I'm just thinking about things, man, and exploring, and yeah, that's about it. And it's actually, as this experience that I'm in has progressed, it has made me realize that I need to be more careful when I'm just having fun and throwing ideas out there, and when I am making assertions. I actually thought I had been pretty clear about that, but I will double check my efforts to make sure. Because number one, I have no interest in throwing out my ideas as though they are some kind of facts, because this world is crazy right now, man. And we don't need more of that, right? Like, I'm trying to find and understand the truth. And then other times I'm just having fun. But at no point am I trying to spread damaging, misleading information. And it actually kind of bums me out to think if I have failed in that, because that's something I take very seriously. And if I have, and I'm going to, redouble my efforts to make sure I'm more careful in those things. I am going to do that. But in general, some of the other things that were in that possible comment from Mr. Levenda, as I just said, I don't know how valid they are. The claims about New York not being violent, It's an interesting claim. And I'll look into it. The idea of the Warlock gift shop, I think that's just a misunderstanding. I wasn't actually trying to imply anything nefarious about those stores. And what was the other thing? What was the other big point in the comment? I actually cannot remember what it was, but I think I already went over it, so it's okay. If anybody's actually listened to this point, you have heard it. So, yeah, man, that's where I stand on all this stuff. And, yeah, it's really kind of surreal, man, to, if that actually was Peter Lavanda, man, that is straight up surreal that I actually got a comment from him. But, yeah, dude, you know what, man? I have no ill will towards anybody. Like, this is, I should have been more careful with my language there. But in general, I'm exploring ideas the same way that Sinister Forces explores ideas. And, I made no definitive claims about anything, except my wording about the intelligence connections may indeed have been sloppy. And I will own up to that. I will own up with that, and I will do better to not do that anymore. Although I would also like to qualify that. And this is something I need to qualify into the future. But when I say that somebody has intelligence connections, that doesn't even necessarily mean that it's a bad thing. Like I said, I'm not anti-U.S. military or anti-U.S. intelligence agencies, although some aspects of those things have indeed been nefarious and bad. But, yeah, so I probably do need to be more careful about those things. But, yeah, so that's about it. The whole thing's kind of a bummer, man, because I'm mainly just trying to have fun. And now realizing that it's not that simple. It's not just this thing. I've also received some emails from people of all kinds that have made me realize that, you know, there is something about putting your ideas out there in the world, whether it's being in written form or in video. There's something about simply putting the ideas out there that people automatically start taking it more seriously than if you're just sitting in a living room talking with a bunch of people, just shooting, just throwing ideas around. And I definitely need to be more careful about that, and I need to be on top of that. But anyway, I'm really rambling, and yeah, like I've said in previous videos, and like I'm saying right now, I'm a positive and optimistic person, and I want to be careful about getting myself tied up into these corners that live in the dark rabbit holes. That's not me. That's not where I'm trying to go with any of this, and that's not what I'm trying to say, or it's certainly not what I'm trying to spread. And so, I'm going to be more careful now. I'm going to be much more cautious with how I approach things when I delve into topics, especially when I'm delving into topics with people who are alive. Yeah. It's a really weird thing when you just make videos in your own living room because you feel like you're just in your own living room, and it's kind of easy to forget. Like, no, you're putting this stuff out there. But anyway, let none of this... I'm not, like, this video is not being made to say that, to say one way or the other, whatever Peter Lavanda or anybody else's unproven objectives are, or whatever, whether that be positive or negative. But it is common courtesy and just intellectual integrity to own up when you make a mistake like I did with that wording. And, yeah, and so I'll do that. I'll own up to it. And as for the rest of the response that may or may not have been from the real Peter Lavanda, I actually find it very interesting, and I'm going to dig into that. I find the claim about New York's history to be questionable, but so what? This whole range of things in this world that I don't know. So I'm going to look into that. Maybe the whole projection of the violence and degeneration of the place has been exaggerated or invented wholly out of cloth. I don't know. I'll find some history books from all sides of it and dig into that. That'll be interesting. And but the whole thing about the magical child, that has no merit whatsoever. It sucks if it came across that way, but I actually am not. I am not saying that those stores or anybody involved with them were nefarious. I'm actually fascinated by it, and yeah, I know negative feelings about that, but maybe that was on me for not making that more clear when I discussed it. Maybe, possibly, but either way, it is what it is. So peace out, everybody. Mr. Lavanda, if you actually responded to the video and you actually left that response, I hope you had time to listen to this response to your response, and yeah, all right, peace out.